wanna become a big star. Uncle Suru, they say that I'm daydreaming. Musician life is no easy. I wanna become a big star. I'm tired of dreaming of where I want to be, of where I want to go. Uncle Suru, you talk, say you go help me. You say if I believe, I go make a more, I go make a more. I am ready to take over the world, take over the world. Spread my wings and fly away. One day, they're gonna know my name. So Uncle Suru, I'm Uncle Suru lyric. They say if I meet Two-Face, I'm gonna become a big star. Uncle Suru, they say that I'm daydreaming. Musician life, you know, easy. I wanna become a big star.
I go in, cheating on me, and I took a big stick and just knock. Oh my God, I hate it.
In the studio with me is the fabulous. When I saw her on Instagram, I was like, oh my goodness, what kind of belle is this? She's so awesome. She's a registered behavioral technician all the way from Texas. When she came into Nigeria, she was like, I have to come on this show because, you know, she gives us the credibility, like, as in, this is where you want to come on when you want to give valid information. So we're really grateful that you chose us.
Thank you.
In the studio with us is Debola. Yay!
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we are really proud of, you know, what you're doing and the awareness that you're creating. Today you want to talk about, you know, the awareness of children with developmental disabilities in Nigeria.
Right.
And most of the time when the guests come in, I tell them to choose the topic. So why this one particularly?
Well, according to researches that I've heard and read, a vast majority of Nigerians, especially lower and middle class citizens, are very unaware or maybe even unconcerned about topic that is actually quite delicate, developmental disabilities, especially in children. It's commonly seen among school-age kids, and according to the World Reports on Disability in 2011 that I read, about 25 million Nigerians had one kind of disability, and about 4 million live with disability that are related to very significant impairments in the way they function. So developmental disability falls among one of those disorders that is commonly seen in children. So this is a big issue. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel like a lot of people ignore this, and I think a lot has to do with like culture and just understanding and misconceptions about what mental illness like that is.
Yes, and one of your major concerns that you have in your report, like, you know, terms like imbecile, like,
Right.
you know,
Crazy.
those kind of derogatory terms,
Mental
retardation and all of that.
Right.
It's a big concern for you. You even shared with me that you were walking on the street one day and you saw this lady in the marketplace, you know, with a
Right.
baby on her back,
Right.
and you could see that there is.
And I was so tempted to go ask her, like, do you know the baby had facial features of maybe some kind of disorder, could be cerebral palsy or another disorder, but I was so tempted to go up to her and ask her, like, do you know if there's anything off with your baby?
Yes.
She had eyes far apart, she had a flat nose bridge, so it was really interesting.
You know, when you mentioned that, I'm like, in this Nigeria, when you go and meet a mother and tell her that, look, oh, you know, this is your baby. How do people perceive that? Because it's really concerning, and I think, you know, one of the major things I want to equip our listeners with is how to, you know, it's not, it can't be, it's up to all of us.
Right.
So we need to empower people and equip them with the skill to be able to intervene in a socially correct way.
Right.
In your own, you know, words, what would the best approach be in that situation?
Like I was telling you earlier, I feel like if you have like good intentions to tell people and not to bring them down and not to be like, oh, I think your child is retarded or something like that. Whenever you have good intention, it will surely show. If you go up to somebody and tell them, oh, well, I've seen this, I noticed this. Have you also noticed this with your child? You know, ask them politely in a more concerning way, not in a way to bring them down and, you know, lower them. Because a difference does not mean they're lower than you are. A difference just means a difference. And we all have differences.
Absolutely.
That's how I see it.
Oh, absolutely, well said. If you're just tuning in, this is Health Matters with Dr. Jules. Today we're creating awareness with about developmental disabilities in children in Nigeria. In the studio with me is a registered behavioral technician from Texas. And hopefully at the end of the show, you'll be able to identify these, the common ones that we have in our environment, and also know the red flags and know what to do as a parent. And of course, we'll be opening the phone line. So if you are living with a child with a disability or you have a concern that you'd like to ask the guest, we will call out the phone lines, and then you can always call in and join the conversation. Now, Debola, let's talk about these developmental disabilities. Which one in particular are we, talking about today?
Well, I am more I know more about autism than some other ones, but autism and Down syndrome and cerebral palsy, attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, and even a fetal alcohol syndrome are all like categorized as developmental disability. And people might take them for each other. And some come with facial deficits and features that makes them look different, and some do not. Autism does not come with usually does not come with facial features that are different.
Exactly.
But some people have co-occurring disorders that autism and Down syndrome together, or even autism and also be hyperactive, and that's actually a disorder too.
Okay, now let's talk about the red flags, because unlike the behavioral features and stuff
Right.
like that, you are more of their behavior.
Right.
Now, what are those things that a parent can identify in a child or a guardian
Right.
that is questionable, that you should be really concerned about?
Right.
But this is now us going into the nitty-gritty of the situation.
Well, I think when a baby is younger, when you have like a month, 2 month baby, it's harder for you to tell like what their behaviors are, because they don't really have behavior. Well, I mean, they do have behavior,
Yeah.
but they're not like like a grown adult. I think when a baby is like 1 year, over a year, and they're not, you see they're kind of off, like their communication, whenever they want something, they're maybe laughing to get something, their emotions are not quite right, they're inappropriate. That's a common flag that is often noticed. Also, they display indifference with things, like they don't care if you take their toy away, they don't care if you give them food, they don't care if you don't. They might laugh if they're hungry, they might cry if they're happy. Things like that are things that you can notice with children. And children that are supposed to start walking and they're not yet walking, they're like going on 3, 4, and they're not walking. It's a common one. Speech is a big one. They're not babbling that they used to, or cooing like they're supposed to, like the typical child. And I avoid using the term normal child. I use the typical child. That's something often. That's when a parent should start, going to, ask questions, going to their pediatrician and talking about these things. Eye contact is also another big one. I notice in our culture, eye contact is not something that is very emphasized. Eye contact is, even some people, to them, it's actually rude to look at them in the eye. But so it's kind of hard for you to tell when a kid is not giving you eye contact that is functional. You want your kid to be looking at you when they're talking to you. When a kid is not doing things like that, they're just looking away and just like not concentrating. It can be a common sign of autism.
Right.
Also, their communication is very delayed. Speech. Echolalia is a very, very common one.
Explain that.
Echolalia is usually whenever a kid repeats something over and over again. It could be maybe just one word and they would say it forever. Or I've seen kids that would watch a TV show, and the next 2 weeks, 1 month, they're still talking about one line from that TV show, going, oh, well, we're about to take a break, we'll be right back to Disney Channel or something like that. And they would say that over and over and over when they're supposed to be doing work. Say you give a child, okay, go sweep the floor or something, they go sweeping the floor and they're going, you'll be right back to Disney Channel, you'll be right back to Disney Channel, things like that. It's not functional. They're talking, but their talking is not functional. Another very, very common characteristics with autism is repetitive behaviors. Like they could be clapping. I've seen kids that clap, clap, clap. I've seen kids that just stay in the middle of the room and just spin around and just turn themselves around over and over again. And when you try to stop them, they get angry, like, oh, I don't want to stop doing that. Seen kids that are overly attached to certain objects, like overly attached to a certain toy. overly attached to something shaped in form of something, so they will only play with anything that looks like stick, or anything that looks in form of that, a long stick, anything of that shape.
Wow. Okay.
Those are common characteristics
that people should look out
for.
So if you are listening in on the show and you can identify with these things that Debola is talking about, you have a child that is dealing with a developmental disability or some kind of challenge, and you are not sure if that could be a red flag, we are going to play the phone lines, and you can, join us in the discussion.
They say that I'm daydreaming. Musician life, easy. I wanna become a
I'm advocating for the inclusive education, and that the kids should be in the classroom with the other kids. But are you saying that the teacher themselves need to go through extra training to be able to make that happen, or they will be in the regular school, but there will be a different class?
Autism has a spectrum, so like depending on what where the kid is on the spectrum, they can be included in a regular classroom. There are kids that are in a regular classroom and they have this diagnosis and they're going to school and they're doing well. But there's some kids that are in they're lower on the spectrum that cannot function among kids that are typical because of their characteristics, which is communication.
I like the way you use the word typical because some people would use maybe normal.
Right. I avoid that.
Yes, typical is very, very commendable. So
so you have to know where the child is on that spectrum and put them where they're supposed to be. There's some kids that have autism that you would not know they have autism until they tell you. They're in a regular classroom.
Even adults.
Well, yeah, even adults. And I say kids, I generalize.
I know.
Even adults that until they tell you. But you have to be careful with that because communication with other kids there will be some some things there.
I know. Because even when a child has, a typical child has some issues, some kids tend to bully them.
Right.
Talk us through the unique trainings that you do. So there's communication, there is some form of cognitive skill.
There is definitely cognitive. There is communication. We try to do gross motor activity, fine motor, where that's where the the pen and the spoon comes in. Gross motor like jumping, identifying different things, objects, and colors. That's very important. You want your child to know this is bleach. You can't drink that. This is water.
Oh, wow.
This that one
that
you can
detailed.
Drink. Or this is Fanta, and this is a red or orange cleaner
dye
for the
or
house.
something.
Dye, something like that. You don't want them to drink that. So those kind of things they seem little, but they're actually in a bigger scope. They're really important. You don't want them to drink.
Because from what you're saying, it means like the care that is given to one child is different from the care that will be given to another child.
For sure. If another child knows his colors, knows bleach, knows dye, knows water, another child on the same spectrum does not, would drink whatever. Like I know kids that would just walk up to the table and just, not looking because they're so concentrated on something else in the ceiling that they just pick up whatever they see in front of them and just put it straight in their mouth. Mouthing is another big thing I should have mentioned. Mouthing things, objects that are inedible is a very common characteristic with kids that are on the spectrum. Just mouthing of anything that they see, just wanting to,
put it in their mouth.
Yeah.
Wow. From what you just explained, my own concern now is that is it possible to have like a group therapy?
Right.
Or it has to be individualized each time?
Well, the whole point
because in my mind, I'm thinking about what we typically see here.
Right.
And what you are trying to say is attainable.
Right.
According
to ABA is applied behavioral analyst. That's the skill that we use in working with those kids. We do a one-on-one majorly, but then because the communication and just play and social interaction is a big deficit for the kids. There are also sessions where group activities are very, very important, like the fine motor skills, the gross motor skills, like social interactions. And depending on where you are, you are forced to have like social interactions with other kids. I know kids that, one of their goals is idioms, like, things like that. Understand, like if someone say, you know, I feel sick to my stomach, something like that.
Yes.
It's not like, oh,
It's not literal.
Yeah, it's not literal.
Yeah,
Things
exactly.
like that, you know, and we understand that as adults. Like we want our kids to understand things like that too. But the most interesting thing about ABA is the specific, how specific it is with the kid. How like, oh, I'm working with you. I'm focused on you. I'm focused on what you can do and what you cannot do. And there are kids. I work with kids that do amazing things that we thought they can never attain. And they might not know it yesterday. Today they come in and they're doing it. They're saying, reading their 1, 2, 3, 1 to 5.
Right. A lot of things are coming into my brain, and I'm trying to like sieve through them, because I wouldn't know what the scope is when it comes to our government hospitals if some kind of care in this area is being given to kids with these conditions. But one thing I can say is definitely something that we need to look into in Nigeria. So if you are listening and you're in this field and you'd like a platform like this to talk to people about offering this service here, because I know Debola is not here. She's going back to Texas. But she's creating the awareness that we need to have this, service, this kind of, therapy for our kids. It's very, very important. The last time I had an inclusive educator come in and talk about it, I think that's a different category. Yours is more specialized. Now, just to round up the show, I would like you to, because it's one thing for us to talk about it in a broad spectrum, it's another thing for us to know how we can, help in some way. So, as a parent, what advice do you have for, the parent? What advice do you have for us as a society? And what do you think the government can do for these kids in our society?
Well, for parents, I think the most important thing is patience. Like, do not push your child too hard. And one thing I noticed with our culture is just like wanting our kids to, be like the next kid, be better than the next kid. And the thing is that
very
it's
competitive.
it's not always going to be like that. They're better in their own way. These kids, everybody has their, special uniqueness to them, and it's awesome when you see those kids do things that nobody thought they can do. So patience is a virtue that you must have. Also research, go online. We're in a world of technology and everything on Google. Go online and just research symptoms. It might not be autism, it might be something else. Research about, these are the symptoms my child is having. Ask questions.
And there are also virtual communities that you can learn a lot
No,
from.
for sure. I actually found out there is actually a community of initiatives about autism initiatives that I found out recently in Lagos. So research things like that. Also learn about, if it's autism, learn about functions of behaviors. That's a very important thing. The first thing you learn when you're learning about autism is learning function of a behavior. My child is crying. Why is my child crying? Attention is a big one. To get away from something, get away from doing something you want them to do is another one. Just learn about the function of that behavior before you respond. Because if a child is wanting attention in the wrong way, they're jumping up, like flopping to the floor, and then you give them the attention. You just
enabling
reinforce that behavior. So learning about the steps to take when they're doing things, like you're in public, your child is crying, how do you respond to that? Just learning the functions of the behavior. Also reach out to people is another one. Let's get talking, let's normalize these things, because it happens. They're different, we can't name them all. They're different, disorders are in the air. Let me permit me to use that term.
Yes.
So we need to let it be normal that these things can happen, and it doesn't mean that they're normal. It doesn't mean they're crazy. It doesn't mean they're mentally, they're retarded.
Exactly.
It just means they're different, and difference is okay. We're all different.
Absolutely.
And for the government, let's pray.
she actually used the word pray. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
It starts from us. If we're talking about it, we'll get other people talking about it, and it's just like what's that thing called when you throw stones, the ripple in the
exactly
river.
The ripple effect. Absolutely.
Ripple effect.
So I guess at the end of the day, it starts from us. It starts from everybody, talking about it, creating the awareness that we need to do more in this area.
Right.
And of course, doing the little that we can as a society as well. Not necessarily waiting for, like she says, waiting for the government to do something before anybody does anything. We have to come together, pull our resources together, see how we can. What can we do as a people?
Right.
These are our children. you know, we have to even sensitize the other ones so that they know that definitely you need to know this. There's a child. She has this, you know, special, condition that they're dealing or a need. You know, be aware of that and how, you know, to live through that and carry them along, because we have to carry each other along, basically. Thank you. Thank you so much. Demola, for coming in. I know you were like, oh goodness, really? Come on radio? So was it so bad after all?
No, it's not bad at all.
Absolutely. So next time you come by, just let us know so that you come by to share with us what you're doing. And please, we do encourage you to keep doing, you know, what you do and keep being fabulous, because we stalk you on Instagram. All right, so don't go far. The show continues. When we come back, the Poet Nurse will be here live with us talking about voluntary blood donation.